Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you for waiting. Hope you all enjoyed your break and that brief intermission as we reset up our recording. And we are ready to continue our episode. So, Joey, why don't you start where you left off?
Yes, so we were talking about Gunji, who, if you guys don't know, is I would consider him a Jedi Padawan. Um, he was featured for a couple episodes in the Clone Wars series, and then we see him back in the Bad Batch. And he is actually introduced on a mission that the Bad Batch are, I believe, stealing some supplies, and he is also in the same place and is captured, and he is just trying to like get back home to Kashyyyk. They end up helping him because they do find out he is like force sensitive, and as they go back to Kashyyyk, the Bad Batch actually ends up helping him um, deter the Empire from them, and it seems like Gunji and the other Wookiees, are able to live at least decently in Kashyyyk, and we we don't know. I believe the Bad Batch was even invited to stay there, but they decided to obviously move on with their life. Um, so I'm not really sure what his story is going to develop into, but it was also cool to see the relationship that the Wookiees hold with nature on their planet. We saw them basically praying and thanking the trees, which was something interesting because that was not really talked about in any other Wookiee, excuse me, Wookiee media, as far as I know. So that was definitely interesting, to see him again, and it was refreshing to always see Wookiees on screen. And then we get a couple of basic episodes of them just kind of just going on missions and bounties. But right after that, we actually do get the Clone Conspiracy episode that I talked about earlier with Senator Chuchi. And shout out to her guards because her guards were actually like very well trained and like pretty badass. But we see her starting to figure out the truth with the help of other clones of what happened to Camino, and her starting to advocate for clone rights. Um, and then I want to say, really, once we get to episode 11, everything kind of starts to just really go up. And if you don't know, episode 11 is titled Metamorphosis, and that is when we actually get reintroduced to the Zillo Beast. As you guys, if you guys don't know, in the Clone Wars again, um, season 3 or season 4 or something around there. I believe season 3, the Zillo Beast was introduced to us, and basically they were trying to use the Zillo Beast to help in making armor and other stuff like that because of its plating that it naturally had, and also other stuff that it was able to do as it grow due to like seismic energy and stuff like that. And we actually see them discover a basically baby Zillo Beast upon a downed transport full of clone commandos. And we see the Zillo Beast escape and basically grow due to the energy he feeds on at the local village or wherever it is. And we see the Empire come and capture it, obviously, but we see that they clone the Zillo Beast, and they're still doing something with it. So again, we see old and familiar faces, and then right after that, we probably get one of the best episodes of the Bad Batch, titled "The Outpost," that heavily features Crosshair. It's basically Crosshair and another clone called Mayday, and this is really when we see another clone heavily featured outside of the ones that we were introduced to. Um, you know, uh, Besides Rex and clones like that reintroduced, and we basically see how he feels about the Empire and how he is being treated. And throughout this episode, we see a change in Crosshair, and towards the end, unfortunately, spoiler alert, Mayday ends up dying due to sustaining injuries in the snow. And I basically think he was just over everything, so he gave up. Um, and Crosshair ended up killing his commanding officer because he was just fed up with him and how they were treating his brothers. Nonetheless, whether they were regs or not, he, realized those were still his brothers, and he realized something was wrong. And this is actually where we see, Crosshair get transported to I want to say medical, not necessarily medical facility, but a scientific facility where obviously they're doing experiments on the clones and, are going to use him to their advantage. So it is actually quite sad, but it definitely ups what is going on. And then right after that, we get a nice little episode of excuse me, the clones, Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, on a island called Pabu, which is basically like, just in the middle of nowhere, a beach island where they could basically retire and not get noticed by the Empire at all.
It's basically
But
like a refugee center because, like, I mean, during the episode, they talk about how like all the inhabitants are like people from like all across the galaxy, and they're trying to escape like conflict or war. So it's basically like kind of like a unknown like refugee hub where like everybody came together and like made this like functioning society.
yeah, and I remember a lot of people talking about it in the sense of, like, oh, it's just ironic how like Crosshair is suffering, and like, Wrecker Tech and Hunter and Omega are like, kind of on their little vacation. Um, but we obviously see that, this is important to the story because they can just stay here, with Omega and let her grow up and lay down their lives as soldiers. But it seems like they can't quite give that up yet. And obviously, Echo is actually not in the picture right now because he went off with Rex to help clones because he felt that was his calling. And we do see him meet back up with the Bad Batch in about like an episode or two. Um,
And I do definitely think that, even though the episode with the Zilla Beast was titled Metamorphosis, we see that the whole theme of season two is, characters going through some sort of metamorphosis.
mm,
I mean, in scientific terms, metamorphosis is when, I mean, obviously it's most associated with like, caterpillars and butterflies. Obviously, when one object basically becomes another. I mean, we have a caterpillar
yeah,
go through a transition and become a butterfly. Um, so, when you apply metamorphosis to like, our characters in the Bad Batch, we see that Crosshair is, for example, going through his own sort of metamorphosis. He's going to go from like a loyal soldier of the Galactic Empire to now he's questioning his authority, he's questioning his decisions, and he's becoming more independent, and he's realizing that what he's doing is possibly not the best thing in the world. And
mm,
we see him going through his own metamorphosis like that. We see the Bad Batch going through a metamorphosis where they're trying to move away from a life of fighting and warfare and into one of more peace and solitude. We see the clones going through a metamorphosis of being soldiers of the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire, but eventually being phased out and basically tossed to the side and having no purpose.
yeah,
And again, we can see besides Commander Mayday, which I mean, again, that was a great episode. I felt so bad for him. We also see Commander Cody in his own episode kind of go through the same scenario as Captain Hauser in the first season. And what was interesting about that episode with Commander Cody is that Crosshair was also in it. So we see that Crosshair is getting influenced by these different clones that he meets throughout the second season, which I think is important. And in that episode, we see that they actually travel to a separatist planet. So we see that even though the Clone Wars is officially over, we see that there are still separatists fighting out there. So the Galactic Empire still has to go to these separatist planets and pacify them because obviously we see B-1 battle droids, we see a tactical droid, and the woman that was actually in the episode that was like the leader of the planet, she was actually in an episode of the Clone Wars. I don't know if you remember, but she was the leader that Padme spoke to when they went undercover to try to like get
uh,
peace between the Republic and the Alliance.
yeah,
And she was the one that Padme spoke to. So we see that correlation back to the Clone Wars, and we see that there are still separatists out there that are fighting for what they believe in. And if anything, showing that there are still separatists that are fighting against the Galactic Empire shows that maybe they were right all along. And maybe they knew that the Galactic Republic was corrupt, ages ago, And in a way, the Republic turning into an empire basically proves that they were right.
Yeah, I mean
Um, it
that
is
Cody.
interesting to see Commander Cody, go through that change because obviously in episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, we see that he carries out Order 66 and he, commands his, battalion to attack Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we see that he is still a loyal soldier to the Empire, well into, the Bad Batch. But however, we do see, just like Captain Rex, I mean, granted they are different scenarios, but we do see with Cody that he eventually goes to that questioning himself and he goes AWOL. So we don't know where he is, we don't know what his story is. There is speculation that he is possibly being held in a scientific lab, being experimented on, because one of the very final episodes of season 2 showed clones being experimented on and showed them in cages, or cells is a more appropriate word. And people think that one of the clones was Cody, but I don't think anything's been confirmed. So we're not exactly sure where he is or what journey he's on. So it'll be interesting to see what he's up to and to see if he makes an appearance in season 3.
I feel like it would be hard for Cody to be captured. I mean, again, we do see Cody, featured heavily throughout the Clone Wars, but obviously he's a little more mellow of a clone in terms, compared to Rex, obviously, because those are probably like the two main clones in charge in the Clone Wars series and just two of the most known clones. So, I would think he would contact Captain Rex, and especially knowing of the other clones that are out there. Again, like as we see in one of the episodes, we see Rex, Gregor, two other. Well, I think one is called Fireball, and I forgot the other one. I believe two part of the 41st Legion, or the one with that was on Kashyyyk. And then we see again, like I said, Gregor. So we see a bunch of clones.
We also see Hauser make his reappearance.
Yes,
He was one of the clones that was rescued.
yeah, he was one of the prisoners. So again, I do hope they reintroduce Cody, because I always did wonder, because there were stories of Cody training, like basically being like a commander and training future stormtroopers. But obviously, it seems like he doesn't do that, or I guess
And
he may
I
have gone
believe
into
that
that.
story was part of the extended universe. So like that story is like no longer canon. So I guess in this universe or this Star Wars canon that Disney is creating, obviously Commander Cody is going to have a different ending.
Yeah, I mean, I I would assume he would end up with Rex, because a lot of people theorize that in one of the episodes of Rebels, Rex has flashbacks and says Cody, almost in a sense of maybe he found him and they were fighting alongside each other again, and Cody ended up dying, possibly.
It
Because,
is definitely a plausible theory. I mean, that's probably the most likely scenario that, I mean, if you were Commander Cody, I mean, obviously it would make sense if he reached out to Rex. And I mean, again, that's what I love about watching these type of shows, developing your own theories and, seeing what you think, seeing what you think is going to happen.
excuse
And
me.
it's interesting. I mean, because it's entirely possible. I mean, because obviously in Rebels we see Captain Rex kind of like give up on fighting, and like him, Wolf, and Gregor are kind of just roaming around. I forgot what planet they're on. I know is it Tatooine?
No, it's funny because I just watched like the episodes, but it's just some random ass like planet. Like
Oh,
I don't
okay.
remember the name,
But
but
I mean, regardless, we see them give up the fight. I mean, obviously in Return of the Jedi, I mean, you can see that Captain Rex makes an appearance as one of the rebel troopers on Endor. So there is something that motivates him to fight again. And then obviously that happens throughout Rebels. But there is a brief part where he goes from like, wanting to fight back against the Empire and help out his brothers to like living this like life of like solitude and like, non-violence. And I personally think that the theory behind that is because, like you said, I think he's going to meet up with Cody again, and then I think Cody is going to die either sacrificing himself for Rex or just dying in battle. And I think it's going to kind of break Rex to that point because he's probably the closest with Cody out of like all the clones that he is currently friends with or brothers with.
well,
And
yeah, I mean they're both like phase one, like some of the first clones.
mhm. But I mean, again, we could theorize all we want, But shifting back to the Bad Batch, now we can get finally into the final episodes of the show, where we see ultimately all these crosses between clones and clone experimentation. We find out that there is this Imperial scientist on this unknown planet that runs the scientific lab, and he is basically taking decommissioned clones. He is accusing them of false crimes. He is imprisoning them, and he's sending them to this lab to be experimented on. What the experiments are for, a lot of people are theorizing that these experiments are for Emperor Palpatine, which like correlates to the sequel trilogy and like the Rise of Skywalker. It's all part of like the cloning process, so he could try to figure out how to clone himself. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously this ties in the Mandalorian with Grogu, and then obviously the Bad Batch with the experiments on the clones. But ultimately we see that this doctor's goal is to basically do experiments on the clone and find out some specific thing. I mean, obviously he's looking for something with all these experiments. They never say what it is, but I mean, again, we could assume that it's probably for Emperor Palpatine and it has to do something with him. So, um, we see Crosshair's story continue where he's starting to rebel, become more independent, and he is actually taken to this facility after the events of that episode with himself and Commander Mayday at the outpost, and
Yeah.
he's being held prisoner there, and he fights back, and he's actually able to send out a message to the Bad Batch, basically asking for help. And at first they're a little apprehensive because they don't know if this is a trick or if this is actually the real deal. Ultimately, mostly Tech is the one that kind of like, makes the argument that he's our brother. This is legit. We need to go save him. And the events of the final two episodes, start to proceed, where they try to put a tracker on this scientist's ship in order to figure out like where this planet is and how to get there. And unfortunately, during those events, of them infiltrating the Imperial base, we see some familiar faces, like we see Grand Moff Tarkin. We actually see a nod to Rogue One, where we see a Commander Krennic. He's not
Yes.
director, but he's Commander Krennic, and we also see allusions to Project Stardust, which is also again pretty cool. Um, we also see some returning characters like Saw Gerrera, and his extremist ways of. I mean, we're both shaking our heads because we just do not like this man because he just honestly paints the Rebel Alliance and just the rebels in a bad name because like, he's literally the only extremist group that we're ever
Yeah.
introduced to when it comes to rebels. I'm sure there are more out there, but the ones that we see on screen, he's the only one that has like sort of a extremist viewpoint when it comes to the rebellion, basically. And
So no.
because of actions from Saw Gerrera and events that conspire, unfortunately, we see one of the first major deaths of the Bad Batch series. And Joey, when have we ever followed orders? That's all I'm going to say.
Oh
We have to say
God.
goodbye to our beloved character Tech.
Plan
Um,
99.
I personally didn't see it coming. I don't think anybody really saw it coming except for my fucking manager. And, and he comes in, he's like, "Oh, I think Tech's gonna die," and I was like, "Huh, interesting take." And then I watched it later, and I was like, "That son of a." But again, I mean, it was beautifully shot. I mean, Plan 99. When have we ever followed orders? And then, oh, that just thinking about it, like just gets you all choked up. And honestly, it was beautifully done. But I mean, it was really sad to see because people had a lot of speculations that somebody was going to die, and I don't really think anybody thought it was going to be Tech, but based on how they were trying to develop his story in season two, it makes
Yeah.
sense because they were trying to develop his like character like more emotionally to try to
Hmm.
get in touch with like his emotional side, like obviously that relationship with Omega, and then we see that relationship with that pirate Fee, I believe her name is, and ultimately, after the events of Tech's death, the rest of the Bad Batch they actually go back to Ord Mantell to contact Sid and to try to like kind of like heal their wounds because Omega is severely injured. And we didn't touch upon it, but basically, halfway through the second season, they decided to stop working for Sid, and they basically like kind of like run away. So one, I don't understand why they went back to Ord Mantell. I mean, you're telling me
I,
they
I
couldn't
wonder
find
why they didn't go back to
you're telling
Babu.
me that they couldn't find any other medical droid out there? But besides the point, we find out that while they're still on Orb Mantell and they're recovering, they're also mourning Tech. Sid actually betrays them and basically hands them over to the Galactic Empire, and we see Hunter and Wrecker get captured, and we see Omega disobey orders and follow them to try to save them. Ultimately, everything works out, and they're all actually able to get away, except for unfortunately Omega. And basically, season 2 leaves off where Omega is brought back to the science facility, where not only does she meet do you remember the Kaminoan's name? Is it Nala Se? Nala Se.
Yes.
She is reintroduced to Nala Se, which was probably one of the Kaminoans that cared for her while she was still on Kamino. And then we also see the introduction of her sister. Apparently, Omega has a sister, so I don't know what's up with that. I guess they'll explore that later on in a possible third season.
See now,
We see Hunter, Wrecker, and Echo basically go on like this whole revenge story, and then now they're gonna try to do everything in their power to hunt down Omega and figure out where she is. And then that's
well,
basically how season 2 leads off.
everybody is saying that Hunter's gonna be in this Joel Miller era, and
Basically,
I
I
guess
mean
just
that's the
do
perfect
whatever
way
is
to
gonna
kind
have
of like
to.
that's
I
the
mean,
perfect way to like characterize it, to be honest, because I mean he's pretty much the most prominent father figure. I feel like all the other members of the Bad Batch are kind of like brothers to Omega, but when it comes to like a father figure, like Hunter definitely takes the cake.
I mean, he even says it himself that they're gonna stop at nothing, and it looks like Echo is gonna continue to be in the Bad Batch, not go back with Rex for a little while, and they're gonna stop because then it would literally only be Wrecker and Hunter. So they're gonna stop at. He said they're gonna stop at nothing to get Omega back, and it's honestly the last Plan 99 was probably one of the saddest episodes I think we both seen in a while in Star Wars, not only because of Tech dying, but him sacrificing himself. And even if you go back to probably around the middle of the season, there's an episode where Tech is talking about to Omega, obviously, about the loss of Echo, not in the sense of him dying, but him leaving, and now she and the rest of Clone Force 99 have to come to terms with that Echo's gone. I mean, sorry, not Echo, because I thought it would be Echo, honestly. Tech is gone, and it's honestly I've been seeing clips of the scene of it was like in Clone Wars season 7 of them on like a high thing, and Wrecker's like terrified of heights, and Tech's like, oh, if you fall, don't take me with you. And obviously, who's the one that's like literally holding Tech up? Because if you guys haven't seen it, Tech basically falls from a cable car that is like being split in half, and he's hanging on a rope. And if Wrecker tries to go down to pull him up, and obviously as he steps down, the thing is gonna collapse, and he's basically like he's like holding the car because he has the strength to do, but if he lets go, then he either has to hold the car and hope that Tech gets up, or whatever, but Tech shoots, and Wrecker and it's really sad because you see Tech shoot, and for a second Wrecker like holds on, and then he can't anymore, and then Tech is gone. And it's just and it's honestly crazy like how they did that episode, because I feel like it showed like it showed like the I don't the really high stakes that the Bad Batch is on now. Like they all got absolutely like all of them were pretty injured besides Echo. And you saw that they basically did that because if they would have put up a fight at the end, like I think we would have seen even more. But you actually, it's funny because you see them get captured, and then you see them obviously escape, and then now they're gonna try to find their brother and their kid almost. And I am very curious. I feel like how I don't know if they would do 2 more seasons. I think they'll definitely do another one depending on how many episodes. But I feel like it would end in terms of a clone rebellion. I think the Bad Batch would be able to get like a clone rebellion actually happening. Maybe not like huge, like like hundreds of thousands, but I think they would get a small rebellion in terms of like storming this facility, and we would see some high stakes things happen. Like, for example, if we see Cody again, this is where he could possibly die alongside Rex. We could see another member of the Bad Batch perish. We could see the whole Bad Batch perish.
And that would
You
make
know,
the most sense. I mean, because obviously, I think in the Star Wars extended universe, we see that there actually is a clone rebellion, and that's actually how Kamino is officially destroyed. In the extended universe, because we find out that the Kaminoans like are still, cloning clone troopers, but they basically create their own army to take on the Empire. So it was actually in a old Star Wars game in like the early 2000s. And it basically like follows the 501st and their journey like from the Clone Wars like to the Imperial era. And there's basically a journal entry saying that the 501st was dispatched to Kamino to put down this clone rebellion. So at one point you had clones basically fighting clones. Um so but as in terms for a clone rebellion, I don't think so. I definitely think that the Captain Rex and like his squad of clones like will make an appearance and like will help the Bad Batch kind of like assault this like scientific lab. And I do think that if that happens, then it's the perfect opportunity for because how we were talking about earlier, like how Captain Rex is going to lose his like will to fight, which transitions over the rebels. It would make perfect sense if he was helping this assault on this scientific lab and see like a couple of, like most of his brothers slaughtered, and then like if he like loses a really important friend like such as Cody, that would be the perfect like icing on the cake to kind of like finally put his journey like back on track. You know what I mean? Like go from
yeah.
like fighter and like yeah, down with the Empire to like no, this I'm done fighting. I lost everything, and
I
basically taking
mean,
the remainder of the clones and like again transitioning to that solitary life that we see in Rebels, and I think that would be a perfect way to kind of like continue his story, but yeah, I mean, no, I definitely agree with you that there could be, some sort of sequel like that. And I think they could easily wrap up the show in the third season. I think if they did anything longer, I feel like it would ruin the show. But I feel like they can get most of the material and like wrap up the show really nicely in a third season. And
oh yeah.
seeing that we're coming, on to our last 10 minutes of this meeting. Why don't we just give our final thoughts on how we think season 3 is going to be, and then we could wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure there's going to be season three, regardless. I'll probably announce that Star Wars Celebration because there's a lot to be left untold. And I think a lot of people are really liking The Bad Batch. I've been seeing a lot of good things about it, definitely. And, we are fans, ourselves. Um, how I believe season three is probably going to play out is obviously the main objective is to go get Omega, but we're going to see side stories of what is going on in this facility. We're going to see what is happening to the clones. We're going to learn. We're probably going to find out exactly like what is going to happen to almost all the clones. Like what the main goal in that is. We'll probably get some more Palpatine answers. That'll close up some chapters. And we might see the reintroduction of more clones, such as Wolf, because obviously we know he ends up with Captain Rex. Don't know where he is. Hopefully Cody again, and possibly some other members. Um, I think the stakes are going to be huge. I think especially once they get to that mid-season, I definitely think there's going to be more deaths, whether it's Clone Force 99 or other clones. But I think clones are going to die nonetheless, and I think it's going to end in terms of I don't think they're going to have a happy ending. I really don't, because that's not like Star Wars,
No, I mean,
especially
unfortunately,
not the Clone Wars.
I think it's gonna end fairly similar to how season 7 of the Clone Wars ended. I mean, in that way, it ended with Order 66. So I think it's gonna end more on like a negative note, because I mean, obviously, some of these characters we don't know what they're doing, like when it comes to like Rebels and like future projects. So we don't know. But I do see it kind of ending more on like a sour note, or like kind of like a happy medium. I think Omega will survive until the end. I think that's true. But for the Bad Batch, it's I it's entirely possible that they can go all out, or I mean, who knows? I mean, it's totally up to speculation. Um, and I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait for the third season to give us answers, to be honest.
I honestly think Omega's gonna end up leaving with Rex and his crew. I think what is gonna end up happening is either all the Bad Batch is gonna perish, or just again, like I really don't think there's gonna be a happy ending for them. One, because there really isn't a lot of them left. You know, obviously it wasn't a huge squad, but especially where Crosshair story is going, he's being set up to obviously die, and a lot of people thought he would in this one, but it wasn't him. Nonetheless, I think it's going to be even better than the first two seasons, and I think we're going to see a lot of questions, answered in this, and that will make a couple of things a lot more interesting, and hopefully lead to future projects of, maybe more, excuse me, Clone War style animations, or just the telling of these stories. But again, nonetheless, guys, like it's hard for us to talk about this series if we don't review the episodes, because it's not such complicated series. It's something you should honestly watch for yourselves, and because you're definitely gonna love these characters. You don't need to watch the Clone Wars. I would recommend watching at least Clone Wars season 7. But if you're gonna do that, you might as well watch the whole Clone Wars because it's worth it, and develop the love for these clones that both of us have and many fans have, to really you know have such a big impact on the Star Wars community, and both of us obviously. But I mean, other than that, I definitely think there's going to be a season 3, and it's just going to be, what's the word I'm looking for,
Interesting.
the yeah, the ante's going to be upped, basically. Everything, the stakes are going to be high, even higher than they already are. I think they're going to I want them to get revenge on Sid and Saul Guerrero, because screw both those guys. um and we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll see Delta Squad, maybe we'll see Clone 99 versus Delta Squad.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, like you said. But I mean, that wraps up our conversation, guys. This is our brief summary and just kind of like overview of Star Wars: The Bad Batch, and what we thought of it, and how we've been enjoying the series, and where we think it's going, for a possible third season, and maybe beyond. Like I said, maybe we'll get some answers this weekend with Star Wars Celebration, but we'll have to wait and see. So as soon as we find out something, I mean, obviously we'll talk about it and let you guys know. But tell us what you think. If you've watched The Bad Batch, if you've enjoyed it, if you disliked it, where you think it's going. Before we run out of time, I just want to briefly state that we are trying something new here by recording through Zoom. So not only are these podcasts going to be available for you audio wise, but they are also going to be available for you video wise. I just created a YouTube channel for us. It is called Two Sons Podcast. That's literally what's called, Two Sons Podcast. That is O. That is with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. And just as these episodes usually come out Wednesday, Thursday, once we're done recording, I'll probably set them to release at least Wednesday night. So expect videos every Wednesday to be uploaded on the channel. If you guys want a change of pace and you want to watch us in the flesh, so to speak, and see our reactions live and everything, please go check us out. That is going to be at Two Sons Podcast YouTube. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Two Sons Podcast. That is again with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers.
yes.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think of the logo. We just updated the logo. That was part of my doing, and it looks really nice. I was happy with the way it came out, and I mean, just expect some more Star Wars content. Like I said, I mean, I would love to talk about what is announced at Star Wars Celebrations, if we get the chance. But I'm going to leave these last 2 minutes off to my brother, to say his final farewells. And until next time, guys, may the Force be with you. Have a good day, and we'll see you again soon.
Sounds good. Yeah, so closing it out, like my brother said, we are excuse me, we are starting a couple of new things, including a YouTube channel. If that gets up, maybe a TikTok. I mean, we technically both have TikToks, but I don't upload anything on there as of now. Excuse me, so maybe that
I'm
will
sorry. I'm
change.
sorry. I just want to shout. There actually is a TikTok for us. It is also Two Sons Podcast. I basically just took screenshots of like all the episodes that we recorded, and I basically made them as posts so you could check out like all the different categories and all the different episodes that we did. And again, if you want to leave us suggestions and stuff on there, I'll keep updating those weekly, when we put out new episodes. But yeah, sorry, I just want to throw that in there real quick.
Yeah, copy. So yeah, we're definitely trying to, get more social medias out there and everything. And like our goal always is to grow this podcast. And again, that's something we are doing. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, we hit over 400, total listens, which may not seem like a lot, but that's a lot to both of us. And we greatly appreciate it. And let's keep on getting up and let's keep on moving. And hopefully big things will happen. But excuse me. Once again, thank you guys for listening. You can find us obviously under Two Sons Podcast on all those platforms that my brother mentioned. That is Sons with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. Tell us what you think of the new logo. Give us some suggestions on some more content we could do. Expect a lot of Star Wars content, like my brother said, and just let's continue to keep going and pushing out some things and hopefully growing this community. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a good evening, good night, good day. Don't do anything stupid, and may the force be with you.
Have a good one, guys.
Have a good